Let's rip this Band-Aid off. President AOC, and AOC has right now has set up and has been raising money for the Democrats in the last 3 months, has successfully raised $9.6 million. Is she on par to become the next Pelosi 2.0? The answer is yes. Yes. And is she possibly maybe considering a contender for the 2028 election cycle? Is it too early to make this prediction? But was what we're seeing with Fight the Oligarchy, as well as her tour with the joint tour that she's doing with Bernie Sanders and everyone else in the Democrat Party trying to find an image, it would be wrong of Hard Lens Media not to say to you, our viewing audience, that AOC could be potentially be looking as a contender. However, my spidey sense is tingling because I see this as a setup to get people back in the vote blue, no matter who sphere, and AOC is just being used to rally people up, believe in hope, and that somehow the Democrats are going to get their act together. When you had the DNC chair talking about good billionaires, AOC and Bernie don't stand a snowflake's chance in Vulcan's Forge. So what do we have in return? We see a sucker game being set up. Case in point right here, shout out to Hotspot.
It's Donald Trump. Well, what happens the next 4 years from now when a Democrat is in office? What happens when President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez decides to use these same powers that the president has now expanded by simply just pretending not to pay attention to the rulings of the court?
Mm-hmm. It is true that when standards are eroded, they tend to seldom come back and be reinstated. Jennifer, let me ask.
Yeah, President AOC. So what are we talking about with President AOC? Well, first, listen. When you talk about U.S. politics, when we're talking about politics in general, the one thing that's always going to matter above all else isn't policy or issues or concerns of the constituents, international or domestic policy issues, our standing with our allies and friends. It comes down to the 5-letter word, M-O-N-E-Y. Money, 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 money. Let me say that again. Money, 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 money. I'm sorry. Once again, more money. Okay. And who else better to talk about money and quarterly raisings and everything else than none other than Chicago's former mayor. You know him. You love him. He's the guy that tells you that everybody loves their insurance. Rahm Emanuel. Brace yourself. Don't worry. I got a palate cleanser at the end of this. Shout out to Case Study QB.
The question, who is going to fight this for the Democrats? Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, we just learned today, raised $9.6 million during the first quarter of this year. You know a little bit about fundraising. You know, it's how you were raised in the Democratic Party, came up in the Democratic Party. It's a lot of money. What does it tell you about where?
Theoretically, yes. In practice, no.
The energy is in the Democratic Party right now, and with whom, and what her future is.
Yeah, well, let me say this about the election since November and before that. In every special election before November 2024, Democrats won specials where there was low turnout. What's fascinating to me after November 2024, we are winning these special elections in Republican districts with high turnout. Like Wisconsin was record turnout. That's also true in the state Senate races in Pennsylvania, Ohio, or rather Iowa and Minnesota, and the Supreme Court case in office in Wisconsin. That tells me there's a tremendous amount of energy, and it's solely focused, which is why we want this, back to your first question, as a referendum on Donald Trump and his tax.
This is called BS spinning. Now, here's the thing. People like Rahm Emanuel are kind of ticked off that AOC and Bernie are successfully drawing in crowds. It is very clear, there's no denying it, that there's a lot of people who want to drink the hopium copium of Bernie Sanders and AOC because of all the Democrats. And yes, we hear at Hard Lens Media, I want to be clear, I see the writing on the wall. I don't see AOC or Bernie effectively challenging the infrastructure of the party. But in order to keep people excited for the Democrats, these are their only two heavyweights that they have. They're very good at organizing. It's very clear on that. They're very good at holding up these prep rallies, and they're very good in selling the most dangerous thing of all, and that's hope. But hope in one hand, crap in the other. Now, here's where the establishment Democrats get angry, because they can't rely on the true tactics of the 90s and early 2000s. They can't have a Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. They can't, because it's been played out. It's been done. And all that pragmatic stratagems that we saw from the Democrats, especially these past 8 years, has now blown up in their face because they failed miserably on November 5th of 2024. Now, Hardlands Media, we predicted that this would happen, and we have been proven factually correct about the failure of the Democrats. So now they got to go with the next best thing, and that is, oh, turns out, yeah, maybe people do want to listen to Bernie and AOC. But see, the problem with Bernie and AOC is Bernie Sanders not once but twice got screwed over by the DNC establishment. There was a lot of things that happened during the 2016 and 2020 Democratic primaries. Shout out to Nico House and Craig Jardula Pasta and Fiorella Isabel, who were able to be one of the dauntless few in 2016 to really call out, what was happening during the 2016 Democratic primary, where the Democrat Party admitted that they are a private institution, and the people who run the private institution don't like the fact that AOC and Bernie are able to bring in the dough. See, AOC and Bernie know how to play the game. Did they ever hold Biden's feet to the fire? No. Bernie Sanders said that Joe was his good friend, and AOC, don't forget, once said he's exceeding expectations, even though Biden's brain was melting out of his ears.
And the way they're going to hurt the economy and throw it into a recession needlessly. Now, second to that is there's energy in the party out in the country. And the Washington Democratic Party needs to focus on making sure that the focus is on President Trump, what he is doing, and what we're doing to stop it, which is why I would right now, there's going to be a debt limit vote in about 6-7 weeks. I would be very clear about my principles before that vote. Here's where we are on tariffs, clawing back power to Congress. Here's where we are on taxes on the wealthy. And here's where we are on cuts on health care. You need our vote to raise a debt limit. We're ready to work with you based on these 3 principles. You don't meet that, you have the gavel, you have the microphone, good luck. And that's how I would challenge them. Right where the debate has to be on their tariff taxes, on their health care cuts to pay for tax cuts for the wealthy, and on what we're going to do is make sure that the wealthy pay their fair share so the United States stays out of fiscal trouble, which is where the president's taking us into economic trouble.
Do you think it will be more successful if that argument is made with the so-called progressive wing of the party or the more centrist wing of the party?
And see, this is where Rahm Emanuel was like, oh, if you said that to me in Chicago, you'd get some concrete shoes and take a nice cool swim in the Lake Michigan. Listen, this right here, again, was what triggers a lot of the establishment liberals because, the liberals, a lot of them now have to eat crow because it turns out, like, again, most of that base that they gave a middle finger to 2016 and 2020 have now been vindicated. So now I dem exited it, as did a lot of you. Again, I still held on to hope in 2020. I thought that maybe Bernie Sanders would be ready, but I was wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. So now that voting base, now everyone thinks that, okay, maybe the door's open. Maybe we could change the Democrats. You can't do it from the inside. Now, is the progressive independent base more active and motivated than the liberal base? Absolutely. Will the Democrats trick a lot of these progressives and independents and think now's the time? Yeah, I think so. With the amount of crowds that are showing up with Bernie and AOC's rallies, because you have groups that now probably could get a resurgence. You have DSA, Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution. Now, look, I get it. Maybe you want to reform the Democrat Party. Maybe you think you have a chance. But if the Democrats have been crapping in your hat for the past 8 years, don't think things are going to change in 2025 or in the midterm election cycle, because I know what the Democrats are going to be running on. We got to stop Trump. We got to stand up against Trump, and then we got to impeach Trump. I want to be wrong on that, but I have a feeling that that's one of the things that the Democrats are going to run on. Their identity is stopping Trump, taking control of either the House or the Senate, or one of those 2 chambers, or both, and then talking about impeaching Trump. I see the writing on the wall. I want to be wrong.
And again, these Democratic town halls, which are across the country, we're seeing it every night. You've got voters coming to the microphone saying, we want you to fight harder. Why aren't you fighting harder?
Well, first of all, it's fighting harder about the right things. You could fight harder on the wrong things. I think one of the lessons out of 2024 is we were seen and identified by the public, which is why we're at 27% in favorability, because we were fighting about things that weren't core to the American people, which is the bread and butter issues that make up their economic livelihood. We had lost face with the voters and the public as Democrats on middle class issues and American dream. And we got sidetracked on a set of cultural issues where we weren't core to them. And it looked like they were core to us, but not core to them. So fighting harder, I also then, my enjoinder is fighting harder about what? And then second, as somebody that has worked on 5 or 6 national races, you got to look at the district. I don't think there's a cookie cutter approach. You tell me if in a congressional district, and I'll give you one example. I mean, you could say whatever you want about Kamala Harris's ideology. The only 2 Democratic senators that ran below her versus everybody else that ran ahead of her for the U.S. Senate was Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders.
Ugh. God. All of a sudden, I think Warren, I think snakes.
So I don't know all the congressional districts or the gubernatorial races. We're going to have moderates in Virginia. We're going to have moderates in New Jersey. We're going to have progressives. The Democratic primary voters will pick those people, and we'll see which person best positions us for the general election. Elections matter.
Listen, hold on. This is where I love my audience. I mean, seriously. Sometimes I wonder where you guys learn to be so mean. Mastermind Hour. It looks like before and after commercial for Just for Men. See, now I'm going to embrace my gray hair, okay? You know, I'm going to embrace it. My grandpa embraced it. I'm going to embrace it too. I'll be a silver fox.
They have consequences. You tell me the district, you tell me the vote, and I'll tell you whether the ideology is here or there. And so, to me, the core principles are, do you believe in the American dream, and do you believe the American children of families deserve a shot at the American dream, not the shaft? For too long, they have gotten
the shaft. Oh, we've been getting it up the wazoo.
The shaft. And we have to center our party. And
say again about the shaft.
To me, the core principles are, do you believe in the American dream, and do you believe the American children of families deserve a shot at the American dream, not the shaft? For too long, they have gotten the shaft.
I'll say again.
American dream, not the shaft. For too long, they have gotten the shaft. And we have to center our party and root our party in not only believing in the American dream, believing more Americans have a shot at it than what they have gotten. They've gotten a bad deal. And it comes from both parties.
Yeah. And whose policies? Barack Obama's, Biden's policies, Clinton's policies. You know, you got 3 Democrats added in with Reagan, Bush Sr., Bush Jr., and Trump. So, yeah, both parties. And Ram, you were more than happy to work with both parties. You were more than happy to side with your corporate overlords. But see, here's the thing. Let's have a little palate cleanser here, because is AOC potentially, maybe, could she consider running for president in 2028? Does she have a chance? I could see it being the Bernie Sanders campaign 3.0 all over again. I could see this happening. And to be clear here, yes, Bernie and AOC can definitely capitalize on people who have Trump derangement syndrome, who don't like Trump, and can think that maybe this time they could reform the Democrat Party. To which, if anything, if I were to advise AOC, even though they're not going to listen because we asked them to do Force the Vote, which she never showed up for, or March for Medicare for All, or a 3-day General Strike Summit meeting in 2021, it is very clear that the Democrats are going to launch every kind of legal lawfare to work against you. But, oh, wait, Bernie Sanders also purposely turned a blind eye in 2016 and 2020 for his primaries. Didn't really stand a chance against the Democrats because the Democrats, again, are a private institution. So AOC could probably hype people up, but I want to pull up this video. Shout out to Hotspot. Shout out to Nico House, one of the real ones, one of the dauntless few. Let's go ahead and play this video.
All right, y'all. So I'm calling it now. AOC is running for president, and it's a problem that we need to talk about. Now, I know many of you are probably thinking, how the hell could you know if she's running for president in 2028 and 2025? Now, if you've been following me for a while, then you remember I predicted that Tulsi Gabbard was going to run in 2020 in 2017. I predicted Kamala was going to run in 2020 in early 2017 before they released the information about her meeting in the Hamptons. I also predicted that Bernie would be running in 2020, even though many people thought that he would sit out once they found out Tulsi Gabbard was going to run. Now, the reason I was able to predict all these presidential candidates running years before they actually announced is because there are a set of very specific metrics that you can actually look at to figure out what someone's intentions are politically as it pertains to running for president. In the case of AOC, she's been touring the country with Bernie Sanders, has done at least 13 major rallies for this Fighting the Oligarchy campaign, which doesn't really make any sense because her district is in New York and she is safe. So why would you be touring the country while there's a President Trump in power, instead of whenever there was a Biden in power, for example? And why specifically would you be touring the country with Bernie Sanders, who obviously was one of the most popular presidential candidates in history? She hasn't really introduced any new legislation. Bernie hasn't really introduced any new legislation. They're not actually trying to galvanize people behind a very specific cause outside of this general.
Now, I want to pause here for one quick second. I'll let it continue to play on. Shout again to Nico House, who, again, I remember 2020. Oh, God, innocent time, right? The lockdowns and all that jazz. But, Tulsi Gabbard running, Bernie running, Kamala running. I mean, 2020 should have been the real canary in the coal mine, where every one of us should have been raising an eyebrow saying, oh, yeah, everyone kept on saying that anybody could beat Trump on the stage, including Biden, who clearly was having mental issues. But this whole thing reeks. This feels, and I'm in full agreement with Nico House, that there is a setup for AOC to potentially run for president. If she is able to raise $9.6 million, which, while it is impressive, it's not, earth-shattering. It is a sign that the Democrats need a face, they need an identity, and we very well could have their Pelosi 2.0. And unlike Nancy, who is now struggling right now to even maintain any kind of relevancy, AOC is now finally maybe flapping out her wings, leaving the nest, and could very well become a fixture and power player within the Democrat Party. Not to create any real change within, but to now run it the way she sees fit. Still a private institution, just with a different boss. That's same as the old boss. Just throwing it out there.
Idea of fighting the oligarchy, and to be very frank, these tours will not change anything at this very moment. But it does let a lot of people know who one of the most popular quote unquote progressive candidates in history is probably standing behind if she were to run for president. On top of that, AOC has ramped up her television interviews since the start of January 2025. Just like Kamala did, just like Tulsi did, and just like Bernie did whenever they ran for president in 2020. They're even saying that AOC is quote-unquote non-committal to a presidential run, and that her decision will be based on whether or not the Democratic Party is running someone progressive enough for her liking. Now, obviously, fundraising isn't strange, but going out of your way to...
Miguel H., Baby Bear 2028. What's wrong with my audience?
Fundraise so much is strange when, once again, you're in a clearly safe district and no one looks like they're going to touch you there. It's because you're filling your coffers. And donations aren't really just a metric to figure out how much you can spend, but it's also a metric to gauge interest and know just how committed people are to you if you do decide to run. And I want to be perfectly clear. When she announces every actual anti-war independent leftist needs to loudly scream, fuck no. We will not allow another fake progressive to run in the Democratic Party that's already preparing to screw her over, steal millions of dollars from working class people, pretending like she has a chance to win, like Bernie did, pretending she's going to fight the ruling class, when in actuality, she just had the last 4 years to do a fighting the oligarchy campaign rally across the country and didn't do a motherfucking thing. If you couldn't challenge the Democratic Party while they were actively financing and supporting genocide, why in the hell would we believe that you would fight on behalf of the people and challenge the Democratic Party if you were to sit in the Oval Office?
She is working tirelessly to secure a ceasefire in Gaza and bringing hostages home.
And that worked out great. And then there were Palestinians that were able to speak at a DNC convention here in Chicago. Oh, wait, no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen, baby. None of it happened, my lovelies. None of it happened. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Working tirelessly. Gee, boy, Biden and Kamala working hard. AOC standing up against Mama Bear Nancy Pelosi for all her insider trading. Oh, wait, no, that didn't happen either. Remember when AOC was crying when Nancy was wagging her finger in her face like, you better change that no vote for the Iron Dome, and AOC turned a no vote to a present vote. Remember when AOC said the cancel culture and deplatforming works? When Tucker Carlson was kicked off of Fox News. Remember that? I remember. I have some interesting comments at the end of this video.
You wouldn't stand up for Tara Reade just because Joe Biden was running as a Democrat.
Well, I think a lot of what we can look for is look at the aims that the survivor is asking for. And while a lot of folks, again, are trying to jump to the political implications, she has never explicitly said, don't support Joe Biden. She hasn't explicitly said anything in terms of a political remedy that she wants. If anything, it sounds like she simply wants to be heard.
You wouldn't admit that Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and other candidates were getting cheated just because you didn't want to challenge the Democratic Party directly. You wouldn't call out the corrupt process for the Democratic primary this year. You went out there and spoke at a Democratic National Convention that didn't let a Palestinian speak because they were scared they were going to bring up genocide. After you, by the way, said that you know that there are a lot of people who don't even want Kamala to be a nominee, and yet you went along with it all. You didn't want to call the Democratic Party as they were pushing to fund neo-Nazis in Ukraine. You didn't want to call out Joe Biden as he militarized the police state in ways that we had never seen before. And then you went and lied on Jill Stein because you deem her as a threat, even though you supposedly support the same progressive policies that she has advocated for.
You're not serious. You're not to me, it does not read as authentic. It reads as predatory.
Shout out to Roger Meadows, because AOC, I remember you passing out flyers with the Green Party. I'll post that link in the description box. When we had AOC with the Greens. Change of tunes, but she was with the Green Party. I remember. So does Petridge Farms.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying it.
I mean, you couldn't show a single lick of conviction while you had no power and nothing to lose, really. So why the fuck would we vote for you and give you power? How the hell would you act when you have everything to lose? So as we would say in Brazil, no caia esse golpe. Do not fall for the scam. Fool us once, shame on you. Fool us twice, shame on us. But if we let AOC fool us for a third time, it's y'all's fault. So the time to start campaigning against her is now. And what you tell people to do is invest in mutual aid, invest in direct action. Do not support the duopoly. When they tell you, well, then who would you support? Boost up third parties. Do literally anything but donate money to AOC in the Democratic Party. And of course, don't donate money to the Republican Party either. It's time for us to take our power back, and we're not going to gain that power through supporting fake-ass leftist fucking cosplay candidates like AOC.
This is the story. 6 years ago,
So shout out to Hotspot, shout out to Case Study QB, shout out to Nico House. All right, so listen, I want to make my commentary very clear on this because I want to give a shout out to Prim54. You said, other than the Vanguard or Breaking Points, I really don't see anyone giving her a platform. True. And see, here's the thing. I like to know what other people are thinking. See, I don't, I want to hear everybody across the political spectrum. Left, centrist, and on the right. Libertarian, Green, Democrat, Republican. And see, the thing is, what I see happening right now is as the world continues to grow, there's going to be other people rising up. And what I see happening, if it's not going to be manufactured, it's going to come into fruition where you are going to have more people hyping up AOC, be it organic or from the Democrat machine. You got the propagandists too. And I see a rise in the hype. I could see it happening just like how in 2016, Bernie Sanders was capitalized by TYT. I think think, people, think. I need you to think, Mark, think, Heartland's media audience, think. Remember how TYT blew up when they were covering Bernie? Because that was a big thing. I remember when their views would only be like 1,000 and they're getting like 10 to 20,000. I remember that. I remember the hype even after 2018. I remember how people were hyping up AOC and the Justice Democrats and brand new Congress. These are things that we got to remember. And it's going to happen. I think with the crowds of people showing up with Fight the Oligarchy, everyone hyping up AOC, the fact that she's able to draw in money, she's in the wings of becoming Pelosi 2.0. And I could very well see with enough people surrounding her, with everything around Trump here as well, we're seeing a perfect storm for AOC 2028. That could be a thing. Now, look, anybody has a right to run for office, but I've seen this game play before. I saw what happened in 2016 and 2020. So when you see everyone jumping on board with AOC, and you might notice a smell, a taste, the sounds, the sights of what you saw in 2016. And I think what could happen in 2028 is going to be a clone copy, click, copy, paste of the hype of early 2015, 2016 surrounding the Bernie Sanders campaign and everyone trying to rise up AOC up. Nico House isn't wrong on this one. And I just want to add a little bit more to this. I could see this all being built up for her. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be capitalizing on it and knowing how the Democrats screw over progressives and independents, because in 2018, I interviewed a lot of progressives who were running in as Justice Democrats, brand new Congress, our revolution. Their stories were all the same, how the DCCC, the DNC was screwing them over. I see this happening again. Now, could I be so off on it that maybe this is a time where progressives take over the Democrat Party? I mean, it's not impossible, but the infrastructure for the establishment elite is so dug in deep. I don't see how this is going to play out. But I'll let you decide. What do you think? Let's have democracy in the chat. Type 1 for Kit. AOC 2028. This is where we get the change. Because if you don't, that means you're violent. Type 2. No, dude. No. I see your point about 2028 being like 2016. Everyone hyping up AOC and everyone's going to be doing the same thing what happened with Bernie in 2016. I see it happening. I wonder how many twos will be in the chat. I wonder. Do you ever wonder?